Um, this is just an expression of my excitement at the occasion. Prof. Mufamadi is, I think, firstly, the visiting professor of our university, and the nomination was from the Faculty of Humanities. And we are really, really privileged today, Prof, that you are here. As a faculty and the students of public management and leadership, politics, and other disciplines that are here, you should count yourself amongst the privileged in the country or not in the world to be interacting with someone of Prof. Mufamadi's caliber. Prof, we have these lectures often in the university, and it's often a fleeting visit. People come, they give talks, and they go away, and we forget about them. And since 2021, when I joined the university as the executive dean, one of the aims of the faculty is to engage with people of high intellect, people with great experience, people of great integrity, people with ethics, engage with them in a way where students are able to take from that and use what they learn from that experience in the classrooms. What is important about this, Prof, is that we don't see the separation between what the community, because this is kind of an engagement. We don't see the difference between the community and what is learned in the classroom. The reason for that is that the community is often excluded in what we learn. So experiences from great people like Prof. Mufamadi, experiences from great people that we're celebrating today, Raymond Mhlaba, are not visible in what you learn. If anyone can tell me, if you raise your hand, have you read anything in your textbook about Professor Mufamadi? Raise your hand. Nothing, Prof. Raymond Mhlaba, in your textbook? Nothing. So when you learn about leadership, when you learn about diplomacy, when you learn about value-based, when you learn about African leadership, who do you draw from and what do you draw from? The important thing about this interaction is that what you learn today, your lecturers, I'm seeing them, and I'm looking at them. When you say there's no readings from Prof. Mufamadi, when you say there's no readings, trust me, in faculty management committee, I'm going to ask them why there are no readings. So the value of this is that what is brought from outside, the public knowledge from outside, the organic intellectuals, the intellectuals, school intellectuals, what we learn from them should inform what is taught in the classroom, what is assessed in the classroom. So when you're sitting here, I was saying to someone as I was driving here that you're not coming to warm chairs here. You're coming to learn and interpret what you've learned over the years from your schooling, from your university education. Interpret that in the context of what has been learned or what is going to be offered today by Prof. Mufamadi. So because I'm so excited, when I'm excited, I talk and I don't stop. So let me consciously stop today and again show real appreciation, Prof. I know you're really busy. You're in the presidency. We know what is happening. We know in the area of diplomacy. And so we really feel privileged and honored that you could take time off to be here with your son. Thank you very much, and over to you, Nomta. Thank you. Can we please give another?
Thank you very much, Prof, for that, giving us some really insightful thoughts into the essence behind some of the reasons behind why we do these masterclasses and public lectures. So as Prof has provocated us to do, as you know that this is a masterclass, so it's a class, so do not be afraid to take out your notebooks. Do not be afraid to take out your phones and open your notes so that you're able to capture a lot of what is going to be happening today in terms of the engagement. The next speaker is going to be the HOD from the public management, Dr. Amina Saleh. She's going to be giving us the introductory remarks. Let's also give her a hand, please.
Thank you, Nomta, and thank you, Prof. Nseko, and a warm welcome to Prof. Mufamadi. And his son, does his son have a name? Motangwa. All right, so thank you once again to the staff, to our students of the Public Management and Leadership, Politics and History, and all students in the Faculty of Humanities for gracing us with your presence. We do acknowledge that it is the start of recess, so you being here shows sheer dedication and commitment, and obviously a need to hear the conversations that will be taking place this morning. So I'm still a bit old school. I've got notes typed out on a page, not on a tablet or an iPad. So Prof. Mufamadi is no stranger to all of us. He is absolutely no stranger. We do know that he is regarded as a lifelong opponent of apartheid. And in fact, in 1994, he was our Minister of Safety and Security, and he was also twice appointed as the Minister of Provincial and Local Government. So today we find ourselves, and I'm sure you as students, as colleagues, we find ourselves in a world that is changing rapidly, at a rapid pace. It makes our heads spin. There are challenges that we are exposed to, and the conversation at the masterclass this morning is going to deal with the geopolitical challenges and how diplomacy can address these challenges. So geopolitical, it sounds like rather like, geopolitical. It sounds tense, doesn't it? And in fact, it is exactly that. Geopolitical means the tensions between countries, between one or two countries, and the tensions that emanate from these countries result often in unrest. So the masterclass today will be discussing the current geopolitical challenges and the crucial importance that diplomacy plays in addressing these challenges within these spaces of tension and unrest. So we know that there's been a global disruption in terms of unrest, and especially between countries. I can just name, at the top of my head, I can think of the Russia-Ukrainian war. We can think of the unrest happening in Israel and Palestine, and that is just to name a few. So I'm not going to mention too many because I know Prof. Mufamadi will be elaborating on these challenges, and I don't think I am as eloquent as what he is going to be in his presentation. So just some of the challenges, the geopolitical challenges would be, like I've mentioned, the unrest, the political tension between countries, the global pandemic that we faced in 2020, 2021. And as I've said at the beginning, geopolitical means the international relations between countries. And we know that when the pandemic hit us in 2020, with the US, in fact, in 2021, sent just over 56 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine to South Africa. And this is a means of international relations where the US assisted us with vaccines. However, we should not ignore the fact that there was a great discrepancy, and COVID-19 exacerbated the inequalities where the richer countries got the vaccines first and the poorer countries were still left in the dark. So how do we deal with these challenges? And another challenge would be climate change. And we in Gqeberha, we can speak about that. Climate change in terms of, we have drought, we have water shortages, we have food scarcity. These are just some of the issues, the geopolitical challenges that we are faced with. So I don't want to hijack Prof. Mufamadi's lecture, Prof. Maseko, so I will be ending off shortly. So Prof. Mufamadi, in his class today, and I would like to see pens and papers out and note-taking, as Nomta has said, will look at the role that diplomacy plays in addressing some of these challenges that I have mentioned, and I am sure that Prof. Mufamadi will be touching on a few more. And Prof will be providing us with the necessary insight that is so desperately needed in creating a more stable, a prosperous world for future generations through diplomacy and collaboration. And it is important that us as academics, you as thriving academics or thriving politicians, or you never can tell who the next president might be sitting here, or the next mayor of Gqeberha may be sitting here. So it is important for you and all role players to acknowledge the importance of collaboration. The importance that you cannot do this on your own. You cannot tackle geopolitical challenges. You need to address these challenges through diplomacy and collaboration. And this stable world that we all strive for, we all long to live in, this stable world can only be created if all our policymakers acknowledge that it is a collective responsibility. It is not an individual responsibility. It is not the Minister of Safety and Security's responsibility alone to ensure that we have safe spaces to live in, but it is a collective responsibility to traverse these rough waters that we live in. We cannot ignore the fact that we're living in turbulent times. We need to address these turbulent times with sheer dedication to uphold basic human rights principles within a peaceful and just society. So thank you very much, and I'm certainly sitting with my notebook because I'm definitely going to take some notes so that I can also learn much more than what I already know. So thank you to Prof. Mufamadi once again, and I look forward to our conversations this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Dr. Amina Sali. I'm just going to pass these programs from this side because I see that it's the only side that doesn't have programs. I see there are some people standing at the door. There is 2 seats this side, so don't be shy to come in. The room is quite packed, Prof. There's a huge turnout today, which we are really happy about that. So now we have reached the crack of the program. And I would like to ask Lwandiso to also occupy the seat next to Prof. Mufamadi, as he was going to be the respondent today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce our main speaker, right? And then after reading his bio, then you guys can clap. I know that sometimes people clap in the beginning or they get lost in the middle. So I just wanted to say that I'm going to read his bio, and then you guys can clap for that, and then he's going to be able to speak. Prof, you do have your mic ready with you?
I believe so.
Okay, yeah, perfect. We can hear you. All right. So I'm going to read the bio now. So the bio says that Prof. Sidney Mufamadi has dedicated his life to fighting against apartheid, advocating for change from a young age. He was critical in organizations such as the United Democratic Front and Congress of South African Trade Unions. In 1994, He became the Foundation Minister for Safety and Security in the post-apartheid republic and served twice as the Minister of Provincial and Local Government. Prof. Mufamadi's expertise has extended beyond South Africa as he has mediated in various countries like Mozambique, Lesotho, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zimbabwe. He holds an MSc in State and Society Development and a PhD in Political Studies from the University of London. His current research focuses on complex emergencies associated with insurgency and counterinsurgency campaigns in the Horn of Africa. He is the director for the Center of Public Policy and African Studies at the University of Johannesburg School of Business and is a visiting professor at Nelson Mandela University. Adding, he is currently serving as the National Security Advisor to the President of South Africa. Can I say something? Okay, so we're just waiting for the podium to come in so that Prof can stand on the podium. There it is. Yes, the mic is yours now, Prof. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to work out whether I should start with the conclusion or with the introduction. Program Director, Professor Maseko, the Dean of Humanities, HOD, class. Maybe let me start with an appeal for sympathy. I don't know if members of the class are aware that I can't see them. Professor Maseko? They don't know. I'm suffering a temporary handicap. I had an eye operation, so I've temporarily lost my eyesight, but somehow I do feel that I've not lost my vision. Next point, I just want to, Professor Maseko, reciprocate your words of, well, your expression of excitement. I'm very excited to be here. Although I thought between you and the HOD, you raised the expectations of this class to levels which I'm not possibly going to reach. But as I understand it, this is an interactive session, so I'm not expected to say a lot of things, more so because I consider myself to have come for a refresher course. I've come for a refresher course because I'm meeting people who are in the institution of higher learning. There's a lot that I believe I'm going to learn out of this interaction. How do we, as watchers of the current geopolitical situation, how do we read it? And what implications does our reading of this geopolitical situation have for us as a country, for us as a continent, for us as the global south? Indeed, we are going through a period of heightened insecurity, subjection of greater numbers of people in the world to things like famine. People are being rooted from their familiar habitat by conflicts such as the conflict that was referred to earlier in the Baltic states between Russia and Ukraine. If you are a citizen of a country such as Egypt, which is very far away from that theater of the conflict, yet you rely 50% on the grain which comes from Ukraine and Russia, it means that you suffer collateral damage from what is going on in that part of the world. And this status to which Egypt is consigned does not make it a peculiarity. It's a shared fate between it and many other countries in the world today. You who are sitting in this class are best qualified to tell us why this is happening. You are best qualified to tell us whether this is happening for the first time in the history of humanity. If it is not happening for the first time, then it is not a historical aberration. It speaks to the continuities and change that are a perennial occurrence in geopolitics. We can triangulate what we are seeing now to what happened in the aftermath of the First and the Second World War, and even after, at the end of the Cold War, where we saw hegemonic states coming out of situations of conflict, still intent on making sure that they and they alone have a decisive shaping influence as to how the post-conflict world should look like. Ordering the post-conflict world in such a way that they can continue to get a disproportionately higher benefit out of what the world has to offer. Post-Cold War, we saw your counterparts that is the organic intellectuals of the hegemonic project of the United States of America going into full gear providing ideational inspiration to the process of shaping the post-Cold War world order. A case in point is a Samuel Huntington, who wrote an article which appeared then in the in the Foreign Affairs magazine titled Clash of Civilization. That was in 1990. Publishing this article in the magazine in which George Kennan, who in 1947 also published an article, but also wrote a long telegram from Moscow because he was a diplomat posted to Moscow by the United States administration, discussing the same questions that are germane to deciding what America's position should be in the world order post the war. And one of the things that George Kennan had to say was, we, meaning the Americans, constitute 3% of the world's population. Yet we account for more than 50% of the world's wealth. So our foreign policy must be designed such that we can maintain this position of disparity, global disparity. And the world order must obey this, our interest. Now, I've been wondering, what is the clash of civilizations? And I want to thank Professor Maseko for bringing me here so that I can learn from this audience. What is clash of civilizations? What is that supposed to mean? But alongside Samuel Huntington, there was also another American intellectual, well, he still is alive, Francis Fukuyama, of the end of history notoriety. He says that neoliberal democracy represents the terminus of human history, a system so perfect that it cannot be improved upon. When I listen to these things, I get so frightened because I don't know what they mean. But I feel vulnerable because they have a ring of, an ominous ring about them. You know, we as a country, we come from a long history of subjection to colonialism and apartheid. The continent has got this shared history of subjection to colonialism. Until recently, HOD, this continent had more had more foreign policy, I'm not saying foreign policy, I'm saying foreign policy advisors than it had during the days of colonialism itself. I'm talking post-colonial Africa, having more foreign policy advisors than it had during the days of colonialism. That is the stuff that makes possible the sustenance of the disparity that George Kennan spoke about. So when you read the Constitutive Act of the African Union of 2001, and you find in it that African leaders are blaming or are laying the blame at the door of foreign policy advisors for the continent's relative position of backwardness, then you understand where this comes from. Now, our capacity for countering what the likes of Francis Fukuyama have to say, what the likes of Samuel Huntington have to say, our capacity lies here. It can't just be fees must fall. When the fees fall, the nation is entitled to expect dividend from the sacrifices it makes in order to make it possible for the fees must fall. In other words, I'm saying our capacity for counter-theorization, our capacity to resist hegemonic interpellation lies in what we are investing here. So when we say geopolitical challenges and the tasks they pose for diplomacy, our practitioners of statecraft, policymakers and diplomats must rely on the people we are incubating in this classroom, on the quality of advice they are going to give us in order to be able to engage those hegemonic states on equal terms. There was a time when I think we were coming very close to doing that, engaging them on equal terms. And when that was happening, we started to read in newspapers things like South Africa is punching above its weight. Was South Africa really punching above its weight? It's a question I'm posing for this interactive engagement we are going to have. Was it actually punching above its weight? And what does punching above its weight mean? Do we think our learned classes were correct in coming to this determination? Or do we think that even our learned classes are showing an incapacity to read complexity for meaning? It's not only the grade 4s who are unable to read for meaning. It looks like even our educated classes are unable to read complexity for meaning. I'm not making a judgment, I'm just saying it seems. By the way, I have lost temporarily my eyesight, so if I'm wrong, blame it on that fact. I blame it on that fact. Are we punching above our weight? What does that mean? If indeed we are punching at some weight, how does an infant democracy like South Africa, what is it that makes it possible to punch at that weight? It's another question, I guess, that we need to grapple with. But as I say, the hegemonic project, under different conditions, has shown the ability, despite the fact that it does find itself in moments where it had to gasp for air. It has shown the ability also to make considerable recovery. But in my own reading, the geopolitical situation. It's in a state of flux. The global south, with many of its countries raising questions about the suitability of those countries that have been for years playing leadership roles in the world order, which would explain why some of them are lining up for membership of an emerging bloc like BRICS. And so South Africa says, as far as the conflict in Ukraine and Russia is concerned, we choose to be actively non-aligned. You switch on your TV, commentators say South Africa is shooting itself in the foot. You can't be neutral when there is a conflict going on. There is an aggressor and there is a victim. But they don't ask, what do you mean by active non-alignment? They have decided they know what we mean by that. Active non-alignment does not mean the absence of value preference. There's a war going on. What is our value? We are anti-war. We are for peace. Those are the value preferences we are making. And we are not neutral because we are going to act, and when we act to advance these values. We seek an end to war. And by the way, we are just about the only people who are able to interact with Russia and interact with Ukraine. The others can either only talk to Ukraine or only talk to Russia. Active non-alignment doesn't mean passivity in the face of what is happening around you. I thought I was not going to talk too much, because I think we need to leave more room for interaction. But I hope I've succeeded to provoke you into making this a fruitful interaction, a fruitful interactive session between us. I came here ready really to listen, to learn. Hopefully, in the process of learning from you, you will also find some of the things that I have to share useful to your ongoing endeavor to become the learned person that we aspire to see. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Prof, for your insight. My name is Nangam Soteise, and I am currently pursuing my master's in public administration, and I'm also an intern here at the Raymond Mhlaba Center for Governance and Leadership. As Nomta said, I will be co-directing with her today. And I just want to thank Prof. Mufamadi for gracing us with his presence, as well as giving us his insight and wisdom on geopolitics, as this is a very, very quite pivotal and vital concept in international relations today. It also gives us an idea where current world order is, as well as where the current hegemony is lies and what their role is. But I'm going to now introduce our student respondent, who is currently doing his master's as well, under public management and leadership, Lwandiso Stemele.
Do I stand? Good morning, everyone. Good morning, especially to you, Prof. And thank you for that informative session, Prof. I highly appreciate it. As my colleague has said, my name is Lwandiso Stemele. I'm doing my master's in public administration. The topic of my research is an assessment of community participation in disaster management. Case study of just a few points, as I don't have a lot of minutes. 30? No, it's 10. It's 10. Does my mic sound right? Okay, thank you. I'm just going to touch on two issues Prof has said, because Prof did mention as to what does something happening in Russia and Ukraine have to do with the provision of grain in Egypt. And I'll also like to touch on the issue of our stance on the current happenings within that war. And also the fact that this is not the first situation that we have had that relates to war and what happens post-war and how it affects everybody else, even when we don't have anything to do with it, but in some way it does have an impact on us, be it politically, economically, or any other means. So in that sense, as certain products or certain services are shut down because of such geopolitical conflicts or challenges, we at our country, having nothing to do with it, and that affecting us, it shows how important diplomacy is and the type of diplomatic relations we have with these countries. Because if the relationship we have with you is a bit hostile and wary, it's easy for me to close a tap on you. But if we have a cooperative relationship, I must still provide for you, even if we are engaging in this sort of matter. So, Prof, I also would like us to engage on this after we having an interaction, in that our stance as South Africa, our country, we are friends with everyone. We are friends with everyone. We are friends with Russia. We are friends with Ukraine. But them two, the relationship is not that cooperative. The relationship historically has always been hostile. And how does that affect us? And I like it that, Prof, you say that we are the only country that is able to interact with those two. That cooperative relationship we have with both those countries, we use it at our advantage and not see that the world is seeing us that we are shooting ourselves in the foot when we are saying we have this stance of actively non-alignment. You know, as a country, I see that, firstly, South Africa, when we're looking at those principles of bilateral diplomacy, Prof, that we do respect sovereign equality as a country. And secondly, we do respect territorial integrity. And as Prof said, that we are in it that every dispute should be resolved peacefully. And as a country, we do want that peaceful resolution. So, as many would say that we are seated on the fence. No, we are not. We are clearly and intentionally being strategic in this matter as a country. And we are adhering to international principles of diplomacy. So, on our side, yes, there might be challenges in terms of what is happening economically, but we are adhering to what has been said in terms of the principles of diplomacy, and we do want that peaceful solution within that state. So I look forward to engaging further, Prof, with you and our audience. Thank you, Program Director.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Lwandiso, on your insights as well. We will now open the floor for a Q&A session. I would like to take a round of hands, one at a time. One person at a time. Okay, we've got one. Okay. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yonela Ponya. I'm a third year student in the Department of Public Management and Leadership. So, I'm nervous. I want to start off by this question by saying that, in psychology, there's a saying about learned helplessness, right? And looking at the citizens, or especially the youth of our country, attitude towards the challenges of our country, one could argue that we have reached that state of learned helplessness, even though we do have control in terms of voting. Because you can ask a young person why they are not registered to vote, and their answer would be, there's no point, nothing is going to change. So then my question would be, are there any aspects of geopolitics that can be used to sort of remove our youth from the state of learned helplessness? Thank you.
So there's a concept that
Yonela Ponya, Prof.
Tronela.
Yonela.
Yonela.
Yes.
Oh, Bonela. There's a concept, something lateness. I'm trying to understand it.
State of learned helplessness. Learned helplessness, where it basically means.
Oh, okay. No, I'm old school. Yeah, it makes the two of us. You know, we will be talking about Utatu Raymond Mhlaba. If I understood your question. And you are saying that there's this feeling amongst the youth that it doesn't help to vote. Voting will not change anything. Raymond Mhlaba was once a young person. He traces his activism in society to his high school or secondary school days. The school called Maibuye, where as students they formed a student association. That was obviously many years ago. I must tell you that I trace my activism to the time when I was a teenager. I actually left school because of my activism at the age of 18. Our generation of young people, we are generally referred to as the 1976 generation, is the generation that went on when days were very dark to form the United Democratic Front, to form COSATU, to create a mass democratic movement at a time when the ANC, PAC, South African Communist Party were banned. We took up responsibilities which were not children's responsibilities, because there were people like, even when Abu Raymond Mhlaba were in jail, there were people like Onondwe Mankahla. I don't know how many of you know Umanondwe Mankahla. She's from this town. She was brought up politically by Abu Raymond Mhlaba or Govan Beki before they went to jail. She's one of those who mentored us into activism. And I'm saying we built a mass democratic movement which actually played an important role in getting us to 1994. What does that mean? It means that Raymond Mhlaba, the youngster, discovered his mission during his time and set about to fulfill it. The youth of 1976 discovered their mission and set about to fulfill it. This city, which produced those freedom fighters I'm talking about, it's now, this metro, it's now on the headlines for wrong reasons. People were sitting leisurely at home drinking, and 7 of them were wiped out last night. I mean, these are the things we read. People were arrested trying to commit cash-in-transit robbery. When you check what is the age of these people, they are people of the same age that I'm saying Raymond Mhlaba was at or even, they are even, some of them even older, but they are still youthful. There is possibly something we are not doing because we are saying it doesn't help to vote. It must help to do many other things even before you talk about voting. You know, during the days of unfreedom, there was a period when people, young and old, formed street committees in their places of residence because they wanted to take their streets back from the criminals. They wanted to take their lives into their own hands. So it does seem to me that even before you think about voting for someone, you must vote for yourself in order to enable you to do that which will benefit you and your community in your own area. But this is a discussion indeed that we cannot have to finality sitting here. It ought to be possible for young people to say, this is our country and we have no other. Once you make that determination to say, this is our country and we have no other, the next question is, what do we do to make this place a better place? If we have ideas, and our being in class here is supposed to be giving us ideas about an alternative or a better society, what kind of tomorrow do we want to have? A better tomorrow. Now, a better tomorrow does not get delivered to you. You have to ask yourself, what is the contribution I can make to make a better tomorrow possible? I wish we had more time than we are likely to be able to have to actually sit down and go through this discussion systematically. A better tomorrow is not assured. A better tomorrow will be what you set out to make of it. I hope this, what I'm just saying as a starting premise, if you pursue the discussion along these lines, you will find that it gets us into a different place compared to where we seem to be ending so far, to have ended so far feeling helpless and hopeless. So I'm trying to do what to call this? These speakers that move around. Motivational speakers. I'm trying to motivate you to think much more positively about future prospects, understanding that the future is not it's an open destination. If Raymond Mhlaba sat in his village and said, there is nothing we can do, indeed nothing could have happened. You know, I don't know how many of you know former Deputy Chief Justice Mseneke. Chief Justice Mseneke went to Robben Island as a prisoner when he was about 18 years old. He wrote a book after I came out, recently. And in that book he says, you know, when I was in detention, a black security policeman who was standing guard over me said to me when the whites were not listening, "Hey, me like TJ denk just clever, ne?" Why do you think you can defeat these whites who can make an aeroplane and fly when you cannot even manufacture a bicycle? So I think what you are talking about is this situation in which people internalize inferiority. Internalize inferiority. Dikgang refused to internalize inferiority. Raymond Mhlaba refused to internalize inferiority. That is why 1994 became possible. Steve Biko refused to internalize inferiority, and he said, "I'm black and proud." That is why 1994 became possible. I think this is the mentality we need to infuse amongst the young people today. I was listening to your colleague who was speaking here, and I felt my confidence was enhanced, my confidence in the future, because I can see the prospect of a leader, so that we don't keep on going to Washington to say, what consensus have you reached on the basis of which you can come and lead us? We want to lead ourselves. So if you become hopeless, please don't tell me when I'm still alive, because I'm beginning to wonder whether my effort was not in vain. Because even as we were fighting and we were saying freedom in our lifetime, on the other hand, we were saying, even if it happens after we are gone, the coming generation will pick up the spear and move forward. You seem to be wanting to walk in the direction away from where the spear has fallen. And I'm saying, please, for the sake of our future, let's adopt a different mindset from the one I've just heard about. Thanks.
I think we have one more question for you. Oh, so let's start. You want to go? So we have one more person. Your question. Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Msawenko Silanga. Okay. The first question that I have is on how effective is our diplomatic efforts in resolving the conflicts which are in our African countries, the civil wars in our African countries, and also outside in wars like in Ukraine, Russia, and Palestine and Israel. So are our efforts actually effective? And also the second question is also about BRICS, because we know that BRICS actually has different countries with different political standings or political ideologies or positions. So, how is the significance of trust in addressing the challenges that all the countries are trying to resolve on their partnerships? Yeah, I think those are the two questions. Thank you.
Your question is so multi-layered that in fact it's many questions. Maybe let's de-layer it so that we can try to answer it. Program director, you will tell me how many hands do we see. How many of you here know about something called NEPAD?
There's no hands, Prof. There is one, right there at the back.
Okay. What time is our flight back to Johannesburg? No, I think we'll have to change so that we leave earlier. We are in a wrong place. I thought we were at the University of Nelson Mandela. Now, NEPAD stands for New Partnerships for African Development. A commitment made by African leaders to build, as I say, new partnerships for African for African development. Please, I know you Google a lot. Go and Google this and read this NEPAD document, because it speaks to at least the orientation that African leaders adopted, looking at the challenges that we face as Africans. So they talk about 4 types of partnerships. First one is partnership between governments and the people. Accepting a responsibility to improve the quality of relationship between governments and the people. Then the second type of partnership is between governments and people on one hand of countries on the continent. That's African unity. Then the third one is what you do in the multilateral sphere beyond the continent, and also people-to-people relations around, building people-to-people relations around the globe. Now, the quality of governance on the continent in the aggregate leaves much to be desired. That is why you see so many problems on the continent. You see the mixing and unmixing of people, people moving away from their own countries because of civil strife. You see unconstitutional takeover of political power. such as we have just seen in Niger and Sudan and other places on the continent. These things have to be addressed. I think if you look at the role which South Africa, notwithstanding its own internal problems, has played in the rest of the continent, in conflict resolutions, mediation, and facilitation of dialogue in places like the DRC, Lesotho, Ethiopia, peacekeeping missions that South Africa participates in on the rest of the continent. They are addressing precisely the question that you are asking. How effective are we? The first question should be, what are we doing before we even say how effective are we? Yeah, what are we doing? So I'm talking about what we are doing with mixed results, which means we need to do more to organize ourselves better. The problems that you see, outbreaks of conflicts elsewhere, we are not immune from those kinds of developments if we don't pay attention to improving the quality of governance performance in our own country. Things are also likely to get worse. And then you are asking, how effective are we? The fact that we are able to go to Russia, to Ukraine, and persuade the parties to de-escalate the conflict and give diplomacy a chance. And there are aspects of that conflict which we have been able to address to some results. The problem of the movement of cargo, particularly grain, on the Black Sea. We are working on that matter with the United Nations United Nations Secretary General to address that issue. And even as I say, the parties that are not able to talk to Russia communicate with Russia through us because of the way we have positioned ourselves as far as this conflict is concerned. 2 days ago, I was talking to the National Security Advisor of Ukraine, who was saying, we have got these children who were captured during the war by the Russians. So I said, no, but we were just about to give you a report. The Russians have allowed us to send health workers to Russia to see these children, preparatory to their being reunited with their families. But the important point to make about all this is that there is no substitute for diplomacy. We know of no conflict in the world which did not end at the negotiating table. And the fact that people are not at the negotiating table already, it's an indictment on diplomats, not only Russian and Ukrainian diplomats. These antagonists have friends. There is a young Republican Party senator in the United States who has come out to say our, meaning American diplomats, are failing to do their work if they cannot influence the cessation of hostilities when in fact they have got the ear of one party to that conflict. So we are talking to everybody. We talk to the Americans, we talk to the Russians, we talk to the Chinese, we talk to everybody. Because we cannot go deaf and hope to see these wars ending. So I was saying your question is multi-layered, hence I've taken this long to answer it. But because it had so many layers, I can't remember every aspect of that question. Hence, I thought Professor Masako was saying one question at a time. So if you were my student and you don't listen to instructions, you were going to be disappointed with yourself when you look at your marks. Okay.
There's another hand, and then 2. Okay. Yeah. 3. Where's the 4th one? 4. Okay. Dr. Kut.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Kutu from Public Management and Leadership. Thank you, Prof. and Mr. Lwandiso, for highlighting the important point that South Africa is in a good terms with every country in the world. And we've seen what's happening also in African countries like Gabon and also in Zimbabwe. And which is contrary to the question that Prof asked us about the clash civilization, which according to the little research that I did, it says that it's about the global conflict will be based on cultural and religious differences, which is contrary to what's happening in Zimbabwe and also Gabon, because what's happening in those countries is political clashes rather than religious and cultural clashes. So my question to Prof is, what role can South Africa play in promoting stability and cooperation in the Southern African region, particularly in Zimbabwe? Also, provided that SADC also did release the statement after the elections in Zimbabwe, but also South Africa, they are in a good terms with Zimbabwe, and they were supporting the elections that happened in Zimbabwe. So, but now I want to know, what role can South Africa play in promoting stability and cooperation in Zimbabwe, but also we can also look at in Gabon. Thank you.
Well, to start with, I thought the doctor, the good doctor, before he leaves the stage, he will tell us about a country he knows where where there is a conflict which vindicates the assertion that we are going to see conflicts whose main fault lines culture and civilization. Okay, you say Zimbabwe does not vindicate that assertion. Which conflict vindicates that assertion, a good doctor?
Saying, looking at what media has been reporting with regard to what's happening in Zimbabwe, it's more like a political issue where other political, is a Triple C saying that the elections have been flawed, and according to them, they won the election, but also ZANU-PF on the other hand, rightfully so, because the electoral board in Zimbabwe, they did announce that they won the elections. And that alone can create conflicts in the country, and that conflict can affect South Africa since Zimbabwe is our neighbor. Hence, I'm saying that that's contrary to class civilization, because class civilization, it talks about the conflict based on culture and religious. Although there are scholars that criticize this theory of class civilization, saying that we need to include the political conflict.
Are you one of those scholars?
Yes, I would say that I'm one of those scholars that we need to include the political conflict to this theory.
No, I agree with you. You see, maybe let me start there. This notion of clash of civilization, it's a thesis whose explanatory power has been refuted by empirical evidence in many conflicts around the world, including the one you are citing, Zimbabwe. The problem of Zimbabwe, it's one that I think the region, the continent, have to reflect on very seriously. This perennial problem, each time there is an election in Zimbabwe, the outcome gets contested. Each time there's an election, the outcome gets contested. The population is going to lose confidence in the political system and the political process. South Africa, as a member state of SADC, was asked to deal with this matter over a long period of time. You will remember that at some point, we persuaded the parties. We said to ZANU and the MDC then, it's clear to us that you are not going to bypass each other and be able to get peace and stability in Zimbabwe. Therefore, you need to find a way by which you can work together in the interest of the country. The Zimbabweans then obliged and formed a government of national unity. The World Bank conducted some research, and they came out with a finding which said the people of Zimbabwe's happiness index was at its most positive during the time when there was a government of national unity. But because they were doing that after the government of national unity had gone, they actually said, when we interviewed the people of Zimbabwe, we therefore came to realize that they remember that period of the government of national unity with nostalgia. So you are right. When you ask a mainstream scholar in the American system about the causalities of conflict around the world, they will say in Africa, the problem is one. Those societies of Africa, they are multi-ethnic, they are multilingual, and therefore prone to fight one another. That's when they talk about this clash of civilization. And they say they are multi-religious as well. Yeah, multi-religious. Now, all I know is that these characteristics are not peculiarly African. Many, many countries in Europe are multilingual, multi-ethnic, multi-everything, multi-religious. There must be something that explains if they consider themselves to be countries at peace with themselves. There must then be something else that explains why they are at peace. It can't be multi-ethnicity, multi-this, multi-that, which in our case then spells doom. In fact, if you look at the people of Europe, many of their languages are not even mutually intelligible. Whereas we here in Southern Africa, if I'm in Swaziland, I understand what the people of Swaziland are saying when they speak, because our languages are, as I say, mutually intelligible. If I go to Botswana, to Zimbabwe tomorrow, coming as I do from the furthest part of Limpopo, I understand when I'm listening to what a Shona-speaking person is saying. So the explanatory power of this thesis is questionable. What explains the continuing reasons for tensions is the continuing divide in terms of access to wealth between the global south and the global north. And the way the system, the multilateral system, is not helping to reverse this condition. The people of Zimbabwe will never go to war with the people of South Africa because they come from two different cultures. You must have been following a story of the 19 people who were killed in Makado in Limpopo because they were trying to commit cash in transit robbery. You will see the names. They were published today, They were published today of those young people who were killed trying to they formed a consortium of criminals. I think out of 19, close to 10 are Zimbabweans. The rest are South Africans. Because they are a common people. So this notion of clash of civilization does not find any empirical vindication in what we actually observe, as I say, as watchers of geopolitics. Professor Maseko, I don't know if you can afford to pay me, because if you can, I will make more time to really discuss these things in their fine detail. Let's do that. Let's go to Mercado. Those ones failed, let's go to Mercado. Yeah, form a consortium. The Eastern Cape at least has got clever people. The Eastern Cape has got clever people. I'll tell you a story which is very informal about the clever people of the Eastern Cape. But I'm saying in essence that the reason why we are fed these theoretical constructs about causalities of conflicts and so on, it's an attempt to dehistoricize conflicts, to depoliticize them, in order for us to focus our attention on non-solutions, because the actual solutions will get us to confront the system head-on, to say what are the structural injustices in this system which must be removed. I heard this criticism about BRICS being a bloc of countries that are dissimilar in their orientation. Will they therefore become a functional unit? Is the UN not also made up of countries that are dissimilar in orientation? The European Union today is just as dissimilar as this bloc is. What you then have to understand is that when you have got different civilizations, different cultures, there is no inherent conflict in difference. On the contrary, what you require is a dialogue amongst civilizations, not clashes. You require a proactive action of dialogue, conversation amongst civilizations. Because when you create this dialogue of civilizations, you actually find that they enrich each other. Now, the contribution, the singular contribution that South Africa can make to this process of ensuring that there is cultural and civilizational dialogue is to succeed to implement its own constitutional obligations here. The commitment to build a non-racial democracy, a secular state. Because if we succeed to do what we said we will do in our constitution, we begin to project to the rest of the world the possibility that this can be done. And this point I'm making, I've heard it even being made by Professor John Stremlau from the university, Wits University. He's actually an American professor who happens to be one of the right-thinking ones. He's making this point. He says South Africa has something to teach even America in this regard. Because America, we have our own problems. Actually, America has got a bigger problem in some senses. These blacks that are getting shot by police almost every day, you know the story in America. Then Julius says, kill the Boer. And someone threatens to take Julius to a court in America where there is a bigger problem. And he doesn't understand that Julius does not mean what he's saying. He's just trying also to look like he fought somewhere because he came in when this war had ended. the war in which it was justified perhaps to even say kill the Boer. So it's a child playing with a wrong toy. You have to talk to that child and say, war is not a toy. But the real point I'm making is South Africa does have something of value to teach others, whilst it can also learn a lot. And how does South Africa learn from others? You guys have got the equipment to help us learn from others because you are students, you are scholars. You are part of a broader community of the learned. You must bring this knowledge that you are getting out of your scholarship into mainstream thinking within our communities. What you know, I must also know, even though I was not in class with you. That's your responsibility. Cultural diffusion. Omre benefited from this idea of cultural diffusion because when his organization was banned, he suddenly realized that the struggle was going into a phase for which he was not equipped. And he went to China for military training to acquire a skill which he was going to deploy in order to take his own struggle to new heights. Today, we are not asking you to go to China for military training. We are asking you to go to India. You know, when BRICS was happening here, the president of India, Modi, he's what, Prime Minister? Prime Minister Modi was bragging in Johannesburg. What was he bragging about? Does anyone know what he was bragging about? Quite openly. Just as he was sitting in Johannesburg, his people were going to the moon. You remember? That's what we want to see. That's what we want to see. India got its independence in the 1940s, 1949. Some of these European countries are older democracy than India. India did not sit there wallowing in self-pity. It doesn't help to vote. It doesn't help to do this. That is why today it can send people to the moon. We also have pockets of excellence. During COVID, some of our scientists actually produced what we call these therapies that you use to treat diseases. Our own. So we do have pockets of excellence, but we want to see a sea of excellence. I mean, we stopped at the airport here. So I say, may I go to the bathroom? Somebody shows me the bathroom. I can't read, but I'm told that we were also boasting there in that bathroom. There was a notice which says, we don't have water. We don't have water in the bathroom. Why do we boast about that? And not just make sure we have water. So we boast about wrong things. Some people are going to the moon, we don't have water. This is a major city in the country. A city in which we have an institution of higher learning. there has to be some measure of self-sufficiency coming out of our scholarly efforts. I'm just saying that we must think big. That's only then that we will become big, if we think big. So, Professor Maseko, I think this is an appeal that we need to make to ourselves as scholars around the country. To what extent is our daily effort contributing to enhancing the functional capacity of our country? Are we becoming a learning society? Because a society that is not a learning society is condemned to perpetual backwardness. You know, in the 70s, in the mid-70s, there used to be very critical Africanist scholars in the United States, the ones who forced the United States government to stop supporting the apartheid regime. That column of critical thinking scholars seems to be dwindling in the United States. That is why the discourse in the United States is just as confused as the discourse everywhere else. That is why a Trump can do what he wants, and there's no counterbalance in society. I do think that we are not even doing enough I'm talking about us as a nation, really to improve the relevance of our curriculum, especially in the humanities. We are allowing a lot of this monotheist mainstream thinking that comes here by way of hand-me-downs from wrong quarters to predominate. At the University of Johannesburg, well, maybe not Johannesburg. I'm not here to scan her. No, but I'm just saying, you know, I find that we've got our students who are in the humanities, social sciences, and you say, no, maybe we must begin to make them answer essay-type questions when they write exams. But you can see the inclination towards continuing to do multiple choice questions. Yes or no? True or false? At this level. They are going to be hoodwinked by their counterparts when they go there to represent us at the World Trade Organization. When a postgraduate student cannot say we were, they say we was. We was. I have been here. I was been here. So I'm just saying that let's pay attention to enhancing the quality of our education so that we can develop the confidence to engage others on equal terms. That is a geopolitical task we have. That is a geopolitical task we have when now we are cutting to the chase, developing the confidence to engage others on equal terms. There's no weight that is reserved for others, and we cannot punch at that weight. You can see that I'm trying to influence you to bring this to a close, the way I'm winding down, but let's continue to engage. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to take 2 more questions and then we'll close the round. I'll take Dr. Kulashe and stop.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Lutando Lupuzi. I think my question is been answered. Through my understanding, diplomacy requires a skill, or diplomacy is a skill itself. So, citizen engagement or participation plays a crucial role in overcoming or addressing geopolitical challenges. So, whatever impact that the citizen engagement causes is due to the lack of education or unaware of what processes and procedures that the South African government or the authorities of South African have to go through. So my question was, what has to be put in place in order some of the citizens be able to find the information, like have the knowledge, so that in every decision they took or take, they must be aware of the consequences. For instance, I myself just know of these processes through this journey. And before I was like, if ever I see the information on internet as well, I was like, no, it has nothing to do with me. It's for those people that are educated or in higher positions. So in order for the government to put in practical, what are the ideas that can put in practical so that all the South African, including those that are in the rural areas, to be able to engage or be aware of what consequences they put in when they are engaging in such challenges?
Well, let me say this. There's no podium. Okay. No, it's all right. I'm young enough to stand. So, no, I was saying, diplomacy. I think, yes, we have, as I said, to see ourselves as a learning society. Okay, thanks. But it is also important that we demystify things. Ne? We really have to demystify things. Because diplomacy is not only taught at institutions of learning. You come here, you say, I have a degree in international relations and diplomacy. And of course, we will see. But diplomacy, it's something people do every day in their daily lives. African communities, or maybe let me say, starting from your family, you negotiate every day inside a household, starting with your child of 4 years. When you walk into Pick and Pay, and the child wants everything she sees in the shop, you have to find a way of getting that child to accept that today we'll only buy this and that, and not everything in the shop. But the child will be throwing tantrums and so on. I'm saying diplomatic engagement. Chieftaincies used to negotiate with each other over grazing land and many other things to prevent outbreaks of armed conflicts between them. And when they settle, they would even agree to intermarry so that they don't just remain neighbors, but they become relatives. Because becoming relatives was seen as a way of managing conflicts. You are talking about public diplomacy now. We have a system of local government which provides for the establishment of ward committees. The idea behind this provision was to enable a municipality which lacks certain in-house skills to say, you know, we don't have the ability for managing the financial affairs of this municipality. But there is so and so within the jurisdiction of this municipality who are qualified chartered accountants. When we mobilize people into ward committees, we can appeal to the ward committees to say, those of you who have got skills that we need, can you also help us to build this in-house capacity by training some of our people here? I'm just giving that as an example. That's diplomatic engagement at an everyday life intended to improve the quality of governance, either at local level, provincial level. We also have an intergovernmental system of government. The idea is that if there are disputes between different spheres of government, there must be systems that must be used to sort out these problems. Actually, this notion of coalition being parties, meaning that parties must come together and say, Kamina Kawen, that's not what we had in mind. What we had in mind was that we must build into the system the possibility of parties, despite the fact that they compete, that they can also cooperate, because the system makes it possible for them to cooperate. It's not understood, hence all these coalitions that get formed, and the following week someone is bribed and switches allegiance, moves this way and that way. So I'm saying diplomacy, it's a society-wide process. When we now talk about diplomats who are representing us in another country, it means then you have taken your theorization beyond the borders of your national territory. You understand governance at a level above the national sphere. But the basic ground rules of diplomacy are observed in everyday life, as I was saying. Because I think if we understand this, those of us now who have come to this level of training, we will also understand what our own contribution is supposed to be in strengthening diplomatic processes at every level. You are supposed to be understanding things at a higher level of complexity. So you should be able to interact with diplomacy at a rudimentary level, so that you help raise the level of doing things in society as a whole. So public diplomacy is very important, but in and of itself, it's not enough. In today's world, it's clear that we can't continue to send people to our parliaments who are ill-equipped to represent us at that level. Maybe it was understandable in 1994. So SALGA carries out a study in KZN, and they find that, I think they said 40% or more of the councillors in KZN cannot read and write. And a leader of one of the parties said, it's not necessary for them to know how to read and write. So when the bureaucrats prepare reports for councillors, who is going to read and who's going to write these reports? to read these reports, if we say councillors do not have to know how to read and write. So all I'm saying is that issues of governance are not the sole province of the educated, but we must raise the general level of education of the population to a better threshold of functionality. You know, I am also learning to do things that 20 years ago I didn't think they were necessary for me to know. This condition I have is even making it more important, because now I have to talk to the phone if I'm left alone at home, and now I have to call someone. I can't see. So I must say, hey Siri, call Professor Maseko. And they say, Professor Masegu, and they make it possible for me to talk to Professor Masegu. Yes. So there is no excuse for our inability to use the implements whose time has come, because they determine what levels of security and comfort and everything positive can we attain as a people. So rudimentary, yes, but our level of rudimentary now must be such that it can compete with yesterday's professional. Then it means we are getting somewhere as a nation. Thanks.
We have one more question, Dr. Hulashe.
Is it on? Okay. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Luandi, for the informative session. I think the young lady who spoke before me actually captured part of my question. But I want to know, Prof, and perhaps anyone else in the room, how does government and our leaders, strike a balance when it comes to geopolitics, diplomatic relations, and their own public affairs as a country? I'm asking this question in this sense. For any government to be strong, it's very important that they get the backing of their people, they get the support from their people. And there's one particular, thing that makes people lose confidence within government, and it's the management of information resources in particular. For instance, Prof, when you were speaking earlier, you made an example of, analysts and people who observe politics who speak on TV and don't understand even the concept of active non-participation or non-alignment, sorry. And I think it's based on them obviously not being informed. And I can go on, even our citizens might not, understand that why are some reports, that we think are of public interest, coming out, to the public. And of course, some might understand that, if those reports come out, I'll use LADR as an example, it might, cause some sort of, national security problem. And the list goes on and on, but the question is around information management as a resource. How can we educate our people to understand, which information the government can share, at what times, how and when, it can be available? And then let me be a naughty student quickly and squeeze in a second question, Prof. And it's a very light question. I always wanted to understand, it's going to sound like a James Bond movie. Do international spies exist? And do you have any story for us, maybe on a lighter note, regarding that? Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, let me put it this way. Although I don't know which of your many questions you want me to answer, but cutting to the chase, you spoke about Lady R. And the diplomatic way in which you came at it, I thought you were just shy of saying, I want to know what are the circumstances in which you people will be justified in saying we can't share some information with the public. Is that what you were asking? 100%. Yeah, you should have asked it that way. Yeah. Now, it starts this way. And again, I say these things, we must demystify them. We come from homes. There's no family which does not have secrets. Aiko. Yeah. There's no family which does not have secrets. But once it has secrets, it does share a lot of things with other families in the neighborhood, relatives and non-relatives. Because coexistence necessitates that people share information and put that information into use for the common good. Now, when you are a country, you have to cooperate with other countries, cooperate to mutual benefit. But you also compete, isn't it, with those countries. You compete in industry, even on things of recreation. You know, sports, it's recreation, but you compete as countries. So we have got a professional football league. All the teams that are affiliated to the league must cooperate in order to make this league viable. But cooperation does not mean that every coach must tell every other coach what formula they are going to use in the next game. You get the point? Those are the circumstances in which you don't share information. Those are the circumstances in which you don't share information. Lady R, in this instance, was dealing with issues of war. Huh? Not war between us and what do you call this? The US. Actually, it's not even war. It's defense capability. Your defense capability ceases to be capability the moment you tell everybody what you have and what you can do and what you can't do. You can't say to your opponent, I do have a team, but I don't have a left-footed player, so I'm using a right-footed player in the left position. It's these kinds of things. In fact, the day we just share every information, not we, I'm talking about the day government just shares every information, remove that government. It is a threat to peace, to the nation's peace and stability. So information can be shared, that which can be shared. That which cannot be shared should not be shared. You know, this word spice, it's a word I don't like very much. Because I think it adds an air of theater to issues of statecraft. National security has got both domestic and international dimensions for reasons that we've been discussing earlier. So you can't have, when the world economy is so highly integrated, in this day in which globalization is defined as one of international life's organizing principles, you can't have your statecraft limited to what you do within the four corners of your country. You must have the capacity to position your country in the world in such a way that it can be competitive and in such a way that it cannot be taken undue attention of by others. So it means that you must have all the capabilities necessary to achieve this goal that I'm talking about. So I don't know whether that capability is called international spying. But what I know is that it is statecraft which seeks to improve the position of your own country in the world. Dr. Khulashe siyavana mus. Women. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. That was the end of our Q&A session. We are going to do closing remarks now, Prof. We are going to call upon Ms. Akona Tinda, the Operations Manager for the Raymond Mhlaba Research Center.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much to Prof. Mufamadi. I think we should give him a round of applause, a very loud one. Thank you very much, Prof, for your address today. It was definitely insightful. It was also informative. And I think you have challenged not only the Department of Public Management and Leadership, but you've also challenged the students to actually explore more on the geopolitical topics in terms of how is it that as South Africa we're not in isolation, that the global world order, I think you termed it, if I am not mistaken, I don't want to quote it wrong. You had termed it that there are a lot of literatures that are out there that we need to take into consideration as we are progressing forward, Dr. Sali, in presenting some of the material that comes from public administration. He called it, and he referred to the clash of civilization. And I think the remaining title of that particular article in the book, it's Clash of Civilization and Remaking of World Order. I would also like to express appreciation to Prof. Maseko, our Dean. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much. I know we've been giving a headache, but thank you very much for facilitating and ensuring that this masterclass happens for the students. Indeed, masterclasses are there to empower the students. I must say, Prof, in my time, we used to look at the posters of the ministers, and every time you got to interact with the minister, it gave you a different perspective to what is within the textbook. So we're hoping that the students of public administration appreciate this initiative by the Faculty of Humanities of being afforded an interaction with one of the scholars and also one of the organic intellects within the space of public administration. I would also like to share that Prof. Mufamadi changed my perspective on local government when he presented the lessons around Project Consolidate. So it is important that we preserve this information and we create these archives so that we can have the reality of the day-to-day operations and theories and what is actually happening within the public sector space. I would also like to thank the Department of Public Administration and Management. Thank you very much, Dr. Sali. I think there's a lot of challenges that Prof. Mufamadi has posed to your department to say that we need to have a C of excellence, and we also need to be a learning society. And with your students here, the outcome of the production of the students will then be able to measure if we are producing towards the C of excellence. And I appreciate what Prof. Mufamadi also said when he says, to what extent is our daily effort producing the graduates that we need for our society? And I think that is why we're excited as the Raymond Mhlaba Center, because this is fitting in terms of the mandate of the sector. I would also like to thank the students for their participation and also them attending this masterclass. And we're hoping that, Dr. Kholashe, we're going to see more publications and more dialogues around this particular area, understanding the context and the interdisciplinary nature of public administration and also with the world order that is currently happening. I would also like to thank the student respondent. I can imagine the nerves that you probably had as we were preparing for this lecture, but I do know that you also probed questions which we would continue to take forward not only in classrooms, but also as the Raymond Mhlaba Center. And lastly, I would like to thank the facilitators. Thank you so much for the way in which you proceeded with the program. I cannot forget Umudana. He will kill me. I was saying to him, Prof, oh, it's good to see him after so many years. So thank you very much as well for your continuous support to Prof Mufamadi. Also, thank you very much to the protocol team. I did indicate, Prof, that without them, some of the things we would not know how they work, but thank you very much. Thank you also to the the business school, pardon me, for the facilities, for hosting, and also thank you to our audiovisual team. We did get some streaming in. I think at some point we're sitting at around 16, 17. People were actively listening from the inception up until now. And I'd also like to thank the colleagues from the RMC team for also their assistance in this regard. Just as an announcement, Program Director, this is not the end for today in terms of our engagements. The institutional public lecture for Raymond Mhlaba will be delivered tonight by Prof. Mufamadi. It's 5:30 for 6 o'clock. So we are just reminding you to come in and participate. I think you got glimpses in Prof. Mufamadi when he kept on referring to Tatu Omrei. Now, this is an opportunity again to get an insight of what does it take to create a society of Raymond Mhlaba's aim. That is what we'll be discussing tonight with the respondent, Ms. Xolelwa Khashe Katia, responding to Prof. Mufamadi's input tonight. So that is going to be at the South Campus Auditorium, 5:30 for 6. So please also attend there. So it will also be enriching for yourselves and also empowering. Thank you very much, Program Director. No, thank you very much. Another announcement is that we have done some catering outside. So would request that we allow the dignitaries to leave the classroom. And then after that, we can then adjourn the session. Thank you very much.